It's happened to all of us. We try to figure out what the right message is, and we try to figure out how do we deliver it so that way whoever we're speaking to can actually hear it. Whether it be that your writing style didn't land the way you expected, whether or not you conveyed it in a presentation that you didn't expect it to land the way it did, and maybe somebody took a message away from it that you didn't intend. It's always something different that could occur, and it reinforces the importance of why different mediums are important, and knowing your audience plays a really big part. Today in the Practicing Leader podcast, we'll be talking about how different types of content types actually make a difference and how it lands with your audience, and make sure you meet your audience where they're at. I'm your host, Parul Bhargava, and let's discuss. Some of the comments I've been receiving about the content I've been producing has been about why am I producing it in several different formats and why am I producing it this way? So I want to take a few minutes to be able to describe the importance of being able to deliver content and deliver messages to people in the format that they're ready to hear, whether it be at work, whether it be you're doing a podcast, whether it be you're trying to deliver a message to a colleague. Making sure you've got the content format right and delivering a message in a way that they can hear and see is going to be important to make sure that your message actually comes across the way you're intending. Without that, what you'll find is that you'll not be as effective as a leader, and you'll run into situations where you think you're being effective at communicating, when in actuality, you're actually going right past one another in terms of the messaging and what your message you're trying to deliver. Everyone has got a unique style of how they're used to learning information. Some people like to be able to read it themselves. Some people like to watch it. Some people like to be doing it directly. Some people like to just listen. Depending on who you're speaking with or how you're conveying your information will have an impact on whether or not it lands appropriately and whether or not it actually meets the goal that you're looking for. Before we jump into different things you could do, let's talk about some of the benefits producing different types of content have for your actual audience. The first one, convenience. If you produce content in a format that they're used to being able to consume, let's say a person is reading through a blog article or reading through a document of some sort, maybe that's the preferred style or preferred method for them to be able to consume information. Or maybe that's the way that they like to actually consume information the most. If you don't produce that type of format, likelihood that that individual will actually consume that information is extremely low. The next one, better comprehension. If you're producing content in several different formats, you have an ability to be able to convey information in a more effective manner, sometimes in video, sometimes as a audio, sometimes as a visual aid, maybe it's a graphic or something else, in order to allow you to be able to convey information more effectively. When you're thinking about how do you convey concepts or convey stories, it's important that you're delivering that content in the most effective manner. Number 3, improved engagement. When you're providing content in several different formats and is provided to your audience, they have an ability to be able to engage with you as the author in several different ways. Sometimes it's effective as a way to be able to convey more information or slightly different pieces of information in different formats. Because, for example, trying to provide visuals in an audio format, not going to work. Trying to provide depth of detail in either video or audio format may not work so well, but maybe providing it in a doc, you may provide a better outcome for people to be able to understand some complex content. Number 4, enhanced learning. By creating content in different formats, you can provide multiple perspectives as well as multiple aids to allow there to be a more comprehensive understanding of the overall subject matter, whether it be something as simple as how do I knit, to something very, very complex of how do I deal with biochemistry. Depending on which one you're tackling, you'll have different types of aids in order to be able to assist somebody that's trying to learn that content. The next one, a more personalized experience. As you're providing different content and different methods for delivering information to your audience, you'll build a stronger relationship with your audience, whether it be, hey, I'm trying to convey how do we do something from our homeowners association, and you meet with a couple folks, you describe what you're trying to do, you're saying, I want to go build out a new patio that's going to be on the front of my house, or whatever the case might be. You then have an ability to then start building stronger relationships, because let's say you did a presentation in one case, you had a conversation in another, you led a discussion. There are different ways for you to be able to convey the same content in order to be able to try to get your point across in order for everyone to understand your point of view. Lastly, and probably most importantly, is you're also catering to different learning styles. There are folks that are visual learners, folks that are auditory learners, folks that learn by doing, folks that learn by doing exercises. There are so many different ways in order to be able to try to tailor content and tailor how you're trying to convey a story or a narrative so that way people can understand. If it's a software development problem, how do you help somebody learn how to deliver software effectively and cleanly? This might be one conversation you have with somebody, or let's say you're trying to say, hey, here's how you knit, here's how you do that, or whether it be, I'm going to go learn how to do wood turning. How do you start conveying and figuring out what the right mode of delivery for each of those experiences are? Listening and talking about wood turning when you're actually on a podcast likely will not be the right medium. But if you're going to be doing it in video, somebody can actually watch the outcomes, see how things turn out, and you can actually deliver content that is very specific to people that want to learn how to do those things. Using this podcast as an example, I actually record this podcast both from video and auditory formats in order to be able to give people the type of content that they're looking for in both formats, whether somebody prefers to go watch this on YouTube or wants to go listen to this as a podcast. Maybe they're doing some errands and they're listening to this podcast as they're going through and doing their work on a day-to-day basis. Or maybe they say, you know what, I prefer not to listen to this or watch this. I prefer to read about this, and they look at this from a blog perspective. Now, whichever the case might be, I'm delivering all of these types of content in slightly different formats in order to be able to convey information to whomever needs to listen to it, or listen's not the right term, but be able to consume that content where they are. So if a person has a few minutes and they want to listen to this as part of a podcast and they want to go do their errands or go for a jog, they can go do that. Or if a person wants to say, you know what, I'm going to go down the YouTube hole of going and watching video after video, maybe I'll go find that content there. Or maybe I'm on LinkedIn and I'm looking at a blog and saying, hey, let me go read that article for 2 or 3 minutes and be able to consume some content really, really quickly. Whichever the format might be, you're at least being able to provide that content to the audience where they are. Similarly, when you're looking at it when you're trying to lead a group of people or trying to change a group of people's minds, whether it be at work, whether it be personally, these things all come into play. Let's say that we're trying to go and convey, how do we make candles? What I would do is say, okay, this is how you create a formula. This is what is involved. Here's how you add in the oils to make a candle. Here's how you raise it to the right temperature. Here's how you pour it. Now, all of these concepts probably wouldn't do so well in a podcast format, but probably would do really, really well in a blog post. So making sure that you're tailoring your content to whom you're speaking to and who you're trying to convey your concepts to is going to be important. Whether it be how you communicate status messaging and trying to teach somebody how to do that effectively when going and talking to management, or if it is about how do I make candles, or if it's how do I knit, or if it's how do we go and figure out how do we exhibit leadership principles. The same processes and the same ideas apply across the board. It only takes a few seconds for you to be able to exhibit leadership in your day-to-day life. However, it takes the right mindset in order to be able to get there. If you're interested in the mindset required to be a practicing leader, please go ahead and go to thepracticingleader.com/workshop to hear more. If you'd like to find the latest content in whichever format is best for you, please go ahead and check out thepracticingleader.com/latest, and you'll be seeing links to the workshop, links to the blog, links to the video, as well as to this podcast. Thank you for listening, and this has been the Practicing Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Prul Bhargava, and I'll talk to you next week.